What's going on, everybody? I'm Jeff St. Pierre, and this is episode 160 of the Adult Education Podcast. Today, we have author Alisha Mughal. This episode is a real special one for me. I had the opportunity to speak with someone about one of my all-time favorite movies, a film that still seems to follow me around wherever I go, a film that still brings me enjoyment 30 plus years after it came out, and a film that introduced me to some of my favorite music through its just legendary soundtrack. That's right, I'm talking about The Crow. Yeah, let's go back to 1994 and revisit the film that helped break open the door for actor Brandon Lee, but also ultimately led to his death. The Crow is a movie that, if you take it at simple face value, you might see a dark and brooding violent romp through a fictional early 90s Detroit. But if you take a moment with us today to just take a deeper look, you may find so much more. The Crow, in fact, is a love story, and a beautiful one at that. Brandon Lee, or Eric in the film, is brought back to life to avenge the murder of his fiancée. And avenge he does, but not without taking us on an emotional roller coaster ride in the process. Now, it's easy to look back on The Crow now and think maybe it doesn't stand the test of time. And let's be honest, a lot of films from that era look very dated now because technology has just gotten so much better. But The Crow, it still feels different to me. There's always been something within that film that has brought me back time and time again. And I always pick up a little something different each time I watch it. With me on the podcast this week is Alisha Mughal. She's written a wonderful book called It Can't Rain All the Time. It's part of ECW Press's Pop Classics series. Alisha beautifully weaves in her own personal story while taking the reader on a journey through the entire filmmaking process. I learned so much from her through this book and from this conversation. Now, in our chat, we discuss the history and folklore of The Crow, how it seems to be tied maybe a little bit to the John Wick series, or you can see the comparisons, and the age-old question about whether the story of Brandon Lee's death helped attract attention the film wouldn't otherwise have gotten, and of course, so much more. I really hope you enjoy our conversation.
I am well. How are you?
I am doing great.
Good. You can hear me okay and everything?
I can. I'm just adjusting some levels on my end, but I can hear you great. Apparently you can hear me fine, so that's good news. Okay.
Yep.
I think your publisher is going to hate me now that I've discovered this Pop Classics series because I just want to talk to everybody. Like every goes out.
It's such a cool series. Yeah, I understand. I've been collecting everyone since for the past couple of years. I have an insane pile going on. Yeah, they're really cool.
I was talking to Veronica Litt, who did the Clueless one that I think just came out.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't think I realized how much I needed to just have like an in-depth conversation about Clueless until getting this book. And I feel similarly about yours, about The Crow. Like this is one of my top 5 favorite movies since I was a kid and I saw it for the first time. And I was like, I just realized I need to talk to somebody about this now. Like reading your book, I'm like, I need to discuss this book in this movie.
Good. I hope so. One of my goals with it was for like fans like you and stuff. I wanted you guys to, even for like lifelong fans, I wanted them to learn something about it that they might not have known. Did you learn anything new? Hopefully.
Actually, yeah, a couple things. One, I knew it was based on a comic or a graphic novel, whatever you want to call it, but I've never actually read it. And so I bought it the other day. It literally came in the mail yesterday. The same day that I got the physical copy of your book, which I was like, this just works out perfect. And then also I always thought that Brandon Lee was killed in a different scene than the one that he was. Like, I always thought he died in the scene where he's towards the end, where he's standing on the table and all those guys are just firing guns at him. I don't know why in my head I guess there's like a moment in that where he does fall kind of strangely. And I always thought that's the moment. And I'm like, for 25 years or however long it's been, 30 years for this movie, I always assumed they just left that part in the final edit, which I always thought was strange, but it was just in my head. Then I realized after reading your book, I was completely wrong. That's not the scene where he died.
No, even me too, before researching, I don't know why I thought it was that scene with Fun Boy where he gets shot and he does the hand thing. I don't know why. And then I was like, oh, they kept it in the movie weirdly. But no, I think we all have like this misconception, or because there's a lot of shooting going on. We just believe that it's one scene and it's going to be a different one.
And there's just this mystery surrounding the film in general. And I think there's this folklore that is carried over with it for 30, was it 94 this movie came out?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
31 years, whatever. Yeah. 31 years at this point. Like, I can't believe we're still talking about it. And they made a remake last year, 30 years after the original. Like, I can't believe this is still happening.
Kind of what I talk about in the book. I think it's just the life in it. It's a very simple romance. It's not too convoluted. The story is like not over ambitious. It's a story about love, you know? It's something that love and grief, which I think I touch on in the book. It's like those are feelings that we've had for as long as we've been human. And I think we are gonna keep on returning to them because for things like these, there's no really cure. And I don't think there should be a cure for grief. It's something that you have to learn to live with. And we turn to these I think this movie is one of the things that fascinates us because it kind of helps us to live with these feelings a bit more instead of kind of just like eradicate them. And you'll see when you get to the graphic novel, it's not about getting rid of the grief. It's about kind of forgiving yourself for the feelings that you have and saying that it's okay, and kind of just like learning to move on. That's one of the things that really surprised me beautifully about the graphic novel is, oh, the ending. You're gonna love the ending. It's so good because not to spoil it. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. Yeah, he gets to the end and he's like, now what? I killed everybody. Now what? I still feel sad. And I think we turn to these to learn what to do when we get to the now what part, you know? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I think it does. And we jumped right into this, which I'm glad we did. I love conversations that just get rolling. But I want to first introduce you, and I want to make sure that I say your last name right. So can you say it for me first?
For sure. My name is Alisha Mughal.
The book is called It Can't Rain All the Time, The Crow. It's part of the Pop Classic series. This is book 17, I think, in the series.
I think it's
16 or 17. And really fascinating stuff. And I want to start off really about touching on how open you are about yourself in this book. And I appreciate anybody that's willing to share their story, their personal journey, because I think the more that people do, the more it can help others in feeling comfortable in their situation. So thank you for being so open, and I'm glad that you're still with us. Let me start there.
Oh, thank you. You know, that was honestly the hardest part, the memoir bits. When I first pitched the book, it wasn't going to have memoir bits at all. But, like, despite being a writer, I've written about movies, but I've found a way to not make it about, not write about myself. Just because it's hard. I don't like it. You kind of like interrogating yourself. It's going to be painful and like going to therapy and stuff. Going to be uncomfortable. But my editor kind of got me to start thinking about memoir, kind of weaving it in. Yeah, it was tough. A lot of the times I felt like I was just being annoying. But that apparently, so I read this book recently. It's called Committed. It's on a similar, not a similar topic. It's about mental illness, and it's a memoir also. And something that felt really validating in reading it, the writer Suzanne Scanlon, she talks about it's like a 300-page long book. She talks about like as she's been writing it, she's wanted to tell herself to shut up so many times. But in reading that, I was like, I'm glad she wrote it because it helped me. And so I'm kind of like reframing my thinking around the book itself, where I'm like, I'm hoping that, I mean, I'm glad I wrote the book, but I'm also hoping that, like you say, that it helps other people to see that it's okay to talk about this stuff.
Absolutely, 100%. I completely agree. And again, I'm glad that you did that. There's a lot of poignant things that you write in the book, but there was one just that kind of ties into where we're at, where you say, it feels wrong to put the burden of hope onto another person who didn't ask for it. And God, when I read that, I had to stop for a second in the book. I was like, that's such a strong line, because I think we all do that, right? Like we all put our hope and our dreams on other people, and they didn't ask for that. You know, sometimes it works out great, but they didn't ask for it. It's not their responsibility to come through with that. That line, I was just like, oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I don't want that to sound like anti-community or anything either.
No.
Yeah, I think to a certain regard, like hope is a very tough thing. And I think we can put hope in relationships with people, but not on this specific person. I think that because everybody has stuff they're dealing with, and maybe connections can provide hope and community can provide hope. But I think it's unfair to put that weight on a person. It can get heavy.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. All right, let's dive back into The Crow because we were talking about that. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I appreciate you, and I felt very strongly about the things you were saying in the book about your personal life. So I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged that before we dove into more into the movie. But you already touched on this. You talked about how The Crow really is, it's an emotional story. It's a love story. I mean, on face value, someone can watch it and can be wowed and amazed by the action and by the killing or whatever. But deep down, this is all about Eric's love for his fiance. They weren't officially married yet, for his
Yeah.
fiance Shelley, and that's what brings him back.
Yeah. To like he's in the grave and he's just like rolling around with this intense pain. And just that feeling is what brings him back. And I'm sure many people, if you've ever experienced love, you would know how it brings you alive in a certain way. I don't know how to describe it. It's like lifeblood, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So you can't sit still if you have these feelings in you. And it's the soul of the film. And I read quite a few Reddit posts, I don't know why, of people like being weird about the movie and like criticizing and stuff. And like a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's so simple. I wish it was more complicated and stuff." And like, no, I think if it was more complicated, I don't know if it would be as powerful as it is now because of it's just simplicity. Because like, who hasn't wanted to avenge their love? I'm sure we all have.
I think it was Ebert's review that you posted where he talks about if they did do the things that other critics wanted them to do, it would have taken away from the story that it already had. Like it already had this beautiful story.
Yeah.
But if you start adding in everything else, like you play Monday Morning Quarterback and you're checking it out and you're like, oh, we could fix this. No, you don't need to fix it. You've already got the product. You've already got the finished thing.
Absolutely. And I think we see it also in the remake. Did you watch the one that came out last
I have
August?
not seen the most recent one. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
No, that was one of its biggest faults. It's like it had way too much going on and it kind of stopped being about love. And there was an even a point where the Eric character, I don't remember if his name was Eric, he starts doubting his love, which it doesn't work in the story at all
No.
because Eric does not have an ounce of doubt in his body about Shelley at all. It's complete, pure love. And so it was, yeah, it gets very, I don't know, too cerebral. It becomes less immediate. I think love stories work on that immediate level where they get into your body and they make you, sweaty or anxious and stuff. Yeah, then the don't. Oh, I do watch it. Watch the remake just so you can have your own opinion about it. But I hated it so much.
I've been waiting for it to come on a streaming service that I already subscribe to, so I don't have to
Yeah,
actually pay for
good.
it.
Not to drag on it too much. I don't think it made too much money because I think people could see that it was kind of soulless as a
Which is
cash grab.
interesting, and I'm not surprised because none of the sequels have really lived up, or the
No.
remakes, whatever. They're not really sequels; they're kind of reboots, remakes, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
None of them have had the same success as the first one. None of them have had the same draw that the first one has. But at the same time, and I'll tell you this, I made this note in my interview notes before I finished your book, but I made a note that said the Crow walked so John Wick could run. And
Yes.
then I got to the end of your book and I was like, holy crap, like we are on the same page
Yeah.
about this. And so I think it's so interesting that they haven't been able to capitalize on this because I think if you put The Crow and John Wick side by side, you have almost the same exact movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. I'm so glad you picked up on that. Yeah. They are. I mean, obviously the characters are different, I would
Sure,
say.
there are differences, but like the main theme, I mean, you look at like
Yeah.
Eric Draven in the original dies and he comes back to life in order to avenge his wife's or his fiance's death, and his love for her is so strong.
Mhm.
And John Wick, his wife is not killed by someone. She dies. I think it's cancer that kills
Yeah.
her, but he still has this grief for her, and they kill his dog, and that just sets
Mhm.
him off. It's the grief, it's the yearning for that love again that
Mhm.
drives him the same way that it drives Eric Draven. And if
Yeah.
John Wick had died at the end of the first movie, I mean, you literally would have had an identical story arc for the hero of the
Absolutely.
film.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And I like to joke that in all the subsequent ones, they're kind of films are all John Wick films are kind of just bugging him. The poor man just wants to grieve. And they keep on making him do things, but I think he just wants to be left alone to just be sad and maybe process all of this stuff. He just wants a dog. I love John Wick, and I think I found in it what I was looking for in the sequels to The Crow, because, like you say, they do try to recreate the same story. And James O'Barr, he I think at a certain point wanted to write subsequent Crow books because the conceit for them would be that people who die for various reasons, the crow would come, and these would be like different people, not Eric corollaries at all. I think one of the stories he had in mind was to have this like female character. She would be brought back to kind of avenge her own personal loss. These stories, he did want to expand upon them, but then make them not Eric photocopies. And I think that's where the movies kind of went astray. They just tried to just remake Eric. They didn't give him like a different loss. They didn't have fun with the character. They didn't maybe think about the different ways that feelings can show up in different people. And I think John Wick succeeds in that way because he expresses grief in his own very distinct way. It's very, very closed off, very isolated. Yeah, very still almost. Yeah, so I think that those movies give us like a different way to see that this is how another person might avenge their love if they're, I mean, it's not as supernatural, but like, I think it gives us what we wanted, maybe.
I mean, they have suits made of Kevlar. I mean, I think that's just about as supernatural as you're going to get
right,
these days.
Exactly. That's a good point.
but you're right about the way these main characters grieve and the way Brandon Lee plays Eric Draven. They have this sort of masculinity that we don't see as much now. Like they have a vulnerability to their masculinity. I think in the world that we live in now with this whole, manosphere or whatever you want to call it, and all these conversations online that have become so rough and intense and really are ruining some people's lives. I almost think you need to look to characters like this to be like, wow, you can be vulnerable. You can have feelings as a man and still be a strong person and still be, I don't know. I think there's such an interesting vision of masculinity that we don't see today.
Absolutely, yeah. It's what I think really arrested me when I first started thinking about the film, I think a few years ago, how just unafraid and comfortable he was in himself. And I think it was because of the pure conviction of love, where it just, and I think it kind of goes back to like the underground tendencies of the graphic novel and the film itself, which is where you found a lot of countercultural stuff, like the raging against Reaganite gender stuff. But it's so nice to see, because despite the fact that Eric is violent, he also feels safe. Like he's not gonna. I kept on in my very early, very naive thoughts about the film. I just felt like he was safe. Like he wouldn't be mean to me, which is something that made me return to him again and again.
He's only going to be mean to the people he needs to be mean to. Like,
exactly.
If you didn't do anything to him, he would save you. I mean, look, the way he treats Sarah, like he picks her up off the street before he even really acknowledges who she is, and has to be like, he touches her and has the memories flow back through him. Like he grabs her from the street to save her life. Like that's the kind of person he is. Yeah, he's got vengeance in mind, but only for that handful of people that wronged him.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that maybe it's okay to do violence to people who are bad. Yeah, that's what I love about it. He's so safe, and just like the bucking of gender norms, which is so not revolutionary, it's just so good about this film. It doesn't care about toxic masculinity. It's trying to like show you that it's okay to be human, have human feelings, which is something I tried to trace kind of like the evolution of gender norms in the book. I'm not sure if I did it too successfully, but yeah, try to explain like this is where our expectations come from. And in the face of these expectations, what Eric is doing is pretty revolutionary and cool.
Oh, at that time period, for sure. I mean, it actually reminded me a lot of, like the way you were describing like the Reagan era, the 80s leading into the 90s, and just how things really started to change in that 91, 92 range, and people just starting to completely have a reconsideration of pop culture and the way life was. It reminded me so much of things that we're going through now, where I'm like, I wonder if in 5-6 years we'll see a similar cultural shift like we did at the start of the 90s, except it'll be the start of the 2030s, instead, which is wild to think about. But yeah, I mean, there really was. And I think, you talk about it in the book a few different times about like, are we being too harsh when we go back and watch this movie? I think in a lot of ways, people that are watching it now, they don't realize what the world was then.
Yeah.
Like I'm 44 years old. So I was like 14 when this movie came out, 13, 14 when the movie came out. And I watched it. I rented it when it came out. My buddy and I had a sleepover, and we watched this movie, and it like always stuck with me. But I was around in that time. Like I didn't know it all because I was a teenager, but like I saw it. I still have a vision of what pop culture was then when I watch it. So it doesn't seem weird to me. Like I was like, that's what was this was, I mean, obviously it's fiction, but like this was life, right? Like this was a piece of the culture at that time.
So I was born in 1993, but even in like the early 2000s, learning about what Kurt Cobain did with like showing up in dresses
Mhm.
on stage and stuff, even in the early 2000s, that was like very uh, renegade, because
Oh
early
yeah.
2000s, it was awful. You were not allowed to call yourself a feminist at all. Very homophobic time. And so even then, Kurt Cobain was like a very interesting figure. And I can only imagine what it was like in the 90s, early 90s when he was doing this stuff live. Um, do you have any memories of Kurt Cobain?
It's tough, you know, because I was not I grew to be a very passionate music fan, but
Hmm.
that fandom started to come a little bit later. Like I remember
Okay.
the day the day after he died, and all the
Oh.
kids in my school showed up, you know, wearing Nirvana shirts, and I was like, "Who's Nirvana?" Like
Mm.
I had to be re-educated. But since then, going back, and I worked for alternative radio stations, so like I've definitely been well versed in Nirvana after the fact. But you're right. I mean, 100%. Even though there was this cultural shift in a lot of ways, it was still not something people were ready for or were used
No.
to. So it was
No.
very, and I mean, it was part of the reason I probably didn't know who Nirvana was, is my parents shielded me from that because
Mm.
they didn't understand and they didn't want me watching music videos of this guy wearing dresses on TV. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So like
Yeah,
there is this element of newness and strangeness that people kind of had to get used to.
absolutely.
I found it really interesting learning more history about the production of the film
Mhm.
and how, not that I would expect him to not do it, but like how seriously Brandon Lee took the role. And there was one part, I think it was a quote that he said where he said, "I'm sure that the world of this film is going to be a better place once the bad guys aren't there anymore. But that's not Eric's reason for doing what he's doing. He's not trying to better the world." And Brandon Lee says in the quote, "So it's not something I've stopped to consider a great deal." And I was like, that's really fascinating to think about because he's right. Eric is not there to make the world better. He's there to avenge the death of his fiance. He's there
Mhm.
to that's his way of showing love, I guess, at this point, is to avenge her life. And that is such a fascinating take on that from an actor's perspective, to say, like, I don't care. Like, this is not something I'm thinking about because that's not my goal.
It blew me away when I read that quotation because it just shows you how well he understood his character. Like,
Mhm.
not that I mean, it also something that I learned in research that really surprised me that he studied the method. He went to Lee Strasberg's Institute in New York. I think he commuted there. So he would have known the method. He would have understood how to get into a character, what to bring to the character to kind of like get all these emotions out. And he worked hard to understand this guy. And to read what a lot of like the producers, I think, were saying, they kind of really didn't understand the character as well as Lee did. And I think that part of that would have come through consultations with James O'Barr also, who does appear in the movie. I
Oh,
think it's the
really?
scene after Gideon's pawn shop blows up. You see this guy running in a trench coat, I think stealing a TV or something.
Oh, yeah.
That's James O'Barr, which is a lovely little Easter egg.
Good for him.
I know, right? He gets something that I think few people, I don't want to say people misunderstand, but I do think like people who want Eric Draven to be a superhero, they're misunderstanding what he's all about if they want him to be a superhero. Because I don't think he's going to become like a Spider-Man just going around saving people who are in danger because he doesn't care about that. He doesn't want to make the world a better place, like Lee says. It's just a story about this one guy.
I made another note. I'm glad you mentioned superhero because I made another note that is, I think the Marvel movies that we have today have ruined comic book movies. And I
Mm.
appreciate a Marvel movie. I can get down for that. I love going to the theater with the popcorn and just letting the special effects just blow me away for 2 hours. So I'm not trying to talk smack about Marvel movies, but what they did to the comic book character completely changed the game film wise. Like I think again, when we rewatch something like The Crow, we don't think about the grittiness of what comic book movies were 30,
Yeah.
40 years ago. We think about the flashy special effects comic book movies now, and
Mm.
there's no comparison, right? But like
Mhm.
there were quite a few, like you mentioned Batman, the original Batman and Batman Returns, and there were others that came in the 90s that had this grit, this like Tank Girl. Like there was this like these gritty dark
Blade.
comic book adaptations, and I
Yeah.
don't think that we will ever look at them the same way because of what Marvel has transitioned that to.
Yeah, they've gotten so clean, and it's an issue again with the Crow remake that came out in August. You turn these people into saints, you kind of deify them, and they become too good, too perfect.
Mm.
They lose the humanity that kind of is a part of the Crow, and then we're just watching. It becomes aspirational. Whereas I think the lesson in The Crow is that we are all Eric. We would all do this if we had a love like this. Whereas with, I don't know, a deified or like a saint-like superhero, we can never become him or her. We just hope to try to be nice in the way that they are, I guess. And yeah, so they lose their humanity, and it just, yeah, I don't like it when movies are too clean in their morality that way. And there's no fun in cleanness.
Yeah. Something else you said along the same lines, Brandon Lee, his father, if people don't know, was Bruce Lee, the
Mhm.
you know the iconic actor and fighter. Well, forgive me if someone's listening is going to get mad at me if I say it wrong. I don't think it's karate that he studied, but I can't think of
Yeah.
the style of fighting. I cannot think of exactly what it is, but Brandon Lee also studied it. So
Yeah.
he's, well versed in this, but he made it a point to not fight like that in the film because Eric Draven wouldn't have known that. Like he wouldn't
Nope.
have known how to fight like that.
Mhm.
So, and I never thought about that. And I was rewatching the movie last night before this conversation. And I'm like, this is like, Brandon Lee could have destroyed any of these people in a heartbeat, but he's not fighting that way. He's fighting like a random, musician would if he got
Yeah.
into a street fight with someone.
Exactly. I love it when he just slaps the guy. One of the
Yes.
guys, he just like bitch slaps him. It's so lovely. Yeah, and you see it move. You see the emotions move through his body as he's fighting. Also, when he's just like, oh, some memories come back because touch is a very powerful thing in the movie. So obviously, when you're fighting, you touch people a lot. So yeah, I mean, he can in the boardroom scene, he could kill people if he needs to, but he's also going to be moved by his memories and stuff, which I love. And that's a stark distinction or contrast to something like Rapid Fire that he would have made a couple years before, where the character that he plays is very well trained in martial arts. So his fighting is much more controlled, much more proper. And the lesson he has to learn in Rapid Fire is that he has to kind of move away from learning and become more in the moment and be more elastic. Whereas with this one, yeah, it's just a lot of it is kind of like street fighting and stuff, which is beautiful to see the versatility in this one guy and just how well he understood both assignments. Yeah, he was great talent.
I can't help but wonder, again, looking at the comparison between The Crow and John Wick, I can't help but wonder, had Brandon Lee not died, if
Mhm.
there would have been an opportunity for future Crow movies with Brandon Lee. Like I think John Wick only works in this world they've created because Keanu Reeves stayed on. If he
Yeah.
ducked out after the first one, they tried to create it with a new character, I don't think it's the same. Like I think we've
No.
lost the John Wick franchise. It became a franchise because of him. So
Oh,
I wonder
absolutely.
if Brandon Lee doesn't die. And I know in the book you referenced that, somebody had asked him that if he would do sequels. And before he passed away, he had said they weren't even considering it,
No.
which I think is great. And I think that's brilliant on his part. But I wonder if he had lived, would this have turned into a franchise? Or if he had lived, would people not have seen it? Because that's the other question. Did
Mm.
people go see it because of the tragedy? And you pose that question in the book as well. So I guess I gave you two questions there. But I wonder what would have happened if the outcome had been different if he had survived.
That's a really good question, and that's something I'm thinking about to this day because we do have that moment from. I think they have like a lot of footage from on set that the producers refused to release, and one of them is actually Brandon Lee sitting down on the ground. I think ahead of filming that insane boardroom scene where he shot a billion times, and I think the journalist she asks him, "Are you going to sign out?" Because apparently the producers were talking about franchising it, and she's like, "Are you still going to be doing this for like Crow 19?" And he's like, I think a part of him was like, "I hope not." And another part of him, he said he's not even thinking about that because that's not for Eric. His story kind of ends with the first one, and
Right.
that he was very aware of that. Where Lee says in the interview, he's like, none of that really would matter to Eric. I don't know what he would have done, but I hope they wouldn't have.
Yeah, Steph, because I think the magic of Eric's character, as you mentioned before, like is the emotion,
Yeah.
is the tragedy of Eric's life.
Yeah.
And, the story does have to have an end there because he's only there to avenge his fiance. So there is an end. There's a logical end for him. And then thinking about it again, like I don't know how you have a sequel. I mean, if you're anytime you create new characters, it doesn't necessarily like there is some magic about Brandon Lee's character. Like the
Yeah.
way he played that role is the magic of this film and is what made this film last the last 3 decades in people's hearts and become this iconic, sort of underground film. So I don't know if I don't know if a Crow sequel or remake was ever going to be successful because I don't think you capture magic in a bottle twice.
No. And I think for Eric, kind of like with John Wick, it would be hell if he had to stay on. For him, it's hell to be on this mortal plane.
Right.
To continue doing this and to be turned into like a machine, that could be an interesting plot point. If somebody, decided, oh, I'm going to use him like a little robot to kill people, not a robot, like a puppet to kill people.
Sure.
And I guess maybe his trouble could be trying to get out of that. But that just, I don't know. Yeah, because he just wants to be back with Shelley. And
Right.
in the end, he gets his happy ending. He gets the white light. He gets to be with her forever. And that's really all he wanted.
Let's kind of jump to the ending of the movie, and I
Okay.
don't think we have to worry about spoilers because the movie came out 30 years ago. So I hope people that haven't seen the film are inspired to go check it out themselves. But if you haven't by now, I can safely say you might not. So we'll go to the end, and I love that you talk about the moment with the trick or treaters at the end
Mm.
because that to me has always been a beautiful scene. And I, for whatever reason, because I'm not good at picking up on nuance in films, but I picked up on this one quick. There is this beauty, in case people are not familiar, at the very end after Eric accomplishes his goal, he runs into some trick-or-treaters. This is all happening on Halloween. And he just has this beautiful moment of laughter and levity. And it's just, I don't know, like I think you say in the book, like you didn't get it at first, but you understood, you grew to love the beauty of that scene.
Yeah, at first I thought, oh, this is a bit cheesy. What's going on here?
Right,
Because
sure.
you almost forget that there's kids in the city while all of this is going on. People live here. People are having lives. And then the kids just come in and you have this moment of like innocence. And Eric, at this point, I think he's killed everybody he's needed to kill because he doesn't know that Top Dollar was the one responsible for it all. He just killed the people immediately and responsible for Shelley and his death. And he allows, not he doesn't allow himself, he just is moved to laughter finally, which now watching it, it moves me to tears because after all the pain, all the tears that he's cried throughout this movie that we've seen him in, he finally gets the joy that he has in those flashbacks. Not even like maybe not the full joy, but like these kids bring him just another pure emotion of happiness. And it's nice to see this sad guy, to see the sad boy laugh. It's beautiful.
There's a transfer there. Like when he takes down Top Dollar, he touches him and he gives him all the pain.
Oh,
And I always associated that as that was the moment that that Eric's pain was lifted because he
mm,
gave it all away. He gave all of that tragedy to Top Dollar and he couldn't handle it. And that was his demise, was
mm,
he could not survive the pain that Eric had been carrying along with him. So I always viewed that scene as Eric's pain is gone now. And you know from the beginning, because he and Shelley were going to get married on Halloween, you know there's a fondness for Halloween in his heart, and he can accept that fondness now. He can accept that joy. And then
mhm.
those kids come along, and that's when it's just like it's this bursting thing out of him with the
Yeah.
laughter. And I always, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I've always thought there was a very special moment in that film. So when people say they think the film doesn't have any deep parts to it, I'm like, this is the deep part. Like you're missing it. You're missing the point.
Exactly. I know. I want to like almost shake people, be like, watch it again. This is such a deep, beautiful movie. That scene where he transfers his pain, oh, it wrecks me every time. Because it's like he's been living with this, and Top Dollar can't even survive a moment with this
Mhm.
pain. It's just, it goes to show how heavy it's been. I think the beauty of Eric is that despite the intensity of the pain, he's still able to love Albrecht and
Mhm.
Sarah, which his relationship with Albrecht and Sarah will forever be the best thing I've ever seen. He and Albrecht, they have my heart.
I
The
have
scene
to
in Albrecht's apartment.
I have to control myself too because there's another scene right there at the end with Sarah that from day one
Oh,
has always made me tear up. But even just getting ready to tell you about it, I'm like feeling the emotions coming in where she says to him that he left without saying goodbye.
mm,
And he says, "You're just going to have to forgive me for that." Like that line has crushed me for 30 years of my life. Like
mhm.
I cannot, it's such a, again, going back to if you don't see the deepness of this movie, you really are just not paying attention because it slaps you in the face.
Do you know that is actually the line that kind of got me to write about this movie in the first
Oh,
place
wow.
because it's so simple, but it hit me like a
Mhm.
ton of bricks because like what else can you do? Like
You
what
can't.
else can a person say after they've left you? You just have to forgive them for that. And again, I can't wait for you to read the graphic novel. Please get back to me once you read it because there is a similar moment at the end of I think I kind of talked about it about forgiveness. And even in like the little introduction, I think because we had the same copy, Obar writes about forgiveness, and he says this beautiful line. He says, "Forgiveness is for the forgiver."
Mm.
So when again, when when it comes to grief, a lot of the forgiveness that we have to do is toward ourselves. Uh,
I can't wait to read. I'm very excited to read the graphic novel.
Beautiful.
And Alisha, I can't believe we spent this entire time. I when I opened the book for the first time, I said there's going to be a chapter in here on the soundtrack because that's also part of the legendary status of this film.
I should have. I
like,
know.
well, a part of me was annoyed that you didn't write about that, but then after reading what you wrote, I was like, we didn't need to talk about it. And the soundtrack to me is, again, it's a top 5 movie soundtrack too. But here's what's funny: I went back to listen to it this week, gearing up for this interview as well, and I was like, okay, yeah, I like these songs still, but there's something missing. And then when I rewatched the movie, the songs hit so much harder. And I can't think of another example of a movie where the music and the movie are so intertwined that the songs take on new meaning. Like there's that scene where you first kind of meet Top Dollar. They're going through the club and there's the band playing, who I can't think of right now, with the blonde female singer. Medicine. Yeah. Okay. So she's singing. I'm like, I listen to that song on its own. Yeah, it's fine. I don't love it. But when they're performing it in that scene, it's chilling. Like there's just, like this movie, like I think, I'm sorry, I'm ranting now, but there's a point where you're talking about the reviews for the film when it first came out, and multiple people called it an elongated music video. And I was like, holy shit, that is exactly what, like The Crow could be an hour and a half long music video.
The best music video ever made.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I mean, I cannot think of another example where the music and the movie are just so perfectly intertwined that way.
Yeah. That kind of goes, we have Proyas to thank for that, because I think this was his first feature length. He had a background in music video making. I think he did it for INXS, another band, a very big band in the 80s. I need to watch, I still haven't seen Dark City. I need to watch Dark City. That's another Proyas film.
I've heard of that one. I'm trying to, okay. Yeah. I got to check that one out too. That was around that time, but I didn't see that one.
Yeah. He was allowed to be as grunge as he was with The Crow, but apparently did iRobot afterwards, which...
Oh, okay. That's right. But you know what? Now that you say, I can see similarity. I mean, obviously a different time and different technology, but I can see similar vibes in some of that. I can see that.
To go back to his filmography, I follow him on Instagram. He's the sweetest dude. I want to send him my book somehow.
I think he would actually love it. I think he would absolutely love what you did with this book. I'm fascinated. And so Alisha, I know the Zoom is going to kick us off in like 2.5 minutes. So I don't want it to kick us off before I can properly thank you and say goodbye and all of that. But like, seriously, I said at the beginning of the conversation, I don't think I realized how much I just needed to have this conversation for myself, because I haven't talked to anybody about The Crow in so long. And it just felt so good. My wife has been driven crazy the last 2 weeks as I've been doing this, because she's like, why do you don't understand like this, how much this movie has meant to me over the years.
This has been my life for the past 3 years. I've been talking about it with everybody and nobody cares to listen anymore. So this gave me life. Thank you for this conversation. We just gushed about The Crow, which is all I could ever want. Perfect day.
Oh, I love that. Alisha, the book is called It Can't Rain All the Time. It's part of the Pop Classic series. I would highly suggest you check this one out as well as others. But Alisha, where can people go if they want to find out more about you or follow along with what you're doing?
I am on Instagram. My handle, I feel like most places my handle would be ALISHAMGL. I am on Twitter, but I'm trying to wean myself off of that. Or X. I'm never going to call it X.
I did finally delete my account and just say, forget it, I'm out. I can't do this anymore.
I know. I am on Blue Sky. I love Blue Sky. Find me on Blue Sky on Instagram. That's about it. You can send me an email, mughal.alisha@gmail.com, to tell me about how much you love The Crow, because I love your story about watching The Crow for the first time, and I love anybody's story about that. So yeah, share stories with me.
Well, Alisha, I thank you so much for this time. Thank you for writing the book, and I just appreciate you, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I wish I could give you a hug. Thank you for this.
Big thank you to Alisha Mughal. It made my heart happy to spend some time talking about The Crow with a real fan and expert. It just really was a special moment for me. Her book, It Can't Rain All the Time, is available now wherever you get your books. And thank you to all of you for listening to this episode of the Adult Education Podcast. If it's your first time listening, I hope you stick around and check out some other episodes. Until next time, though, be well.